Alright, this is a video for 1VT and 1HT about the first paragraph of chapter 6. This one's called Squares and Square Roots. And here's an exercise about a Sudoku. If you have time left, you can fill this in if you'd like. But I'm going to skip it for now, and I'm just going to go to Theory A, which explains what squares are. Well, a square, well, you know that a square is also this shape. Right, that's a square. But you can also use squares with numbers. And what it means is that you do it times itself. And let me explain why using a paper here. Now, if I have like the shape a square, right? This is the shape. It's a square. And if the lengths are both 5, so if this is 5 and this is 5, then the area of such a shape would be 5 times 5 is 25. Right? That's the area then. Now we also call this a square. This is the square of 5. So what squared means is if you have like 1 squared, this is how you write it down, 1, and then there's a little 2 there, you pronounce it as 1 squared. That means 1 times 1, so that's 1. If I do 2 squared, that means 2 times 2, so that's 4. If I do 3 squared, that means 3 times 3, so that's 9. So squared means you have to do a number times itself. And later on, so not in this chapter, but later on you'll also learn what you need to do if there's a different number here. Because here there are 2's there, see that? 2, 2, 2. But here there's a 3, and then you have to do that number times itself again. So you have to do it like 3 times, 1, 2, 3, and then you get 8. But this is not part of this chapter yet, but just so you know where things are going, right? So here we have squares, and in this example they say 8 squared is 8 squared, right? So that's 8 times 8 is 64. So fix 64 is 8 squared. So hopefully you know what a square is now, and then you can make exercise 2 yourself, hopefully, because here you have to just write down what the squares are. Now I did a couple on my paper already, just fill it in and then you know them. And here it says memorize. Well, it is handy if you know a lot of these, because then you can make the exercises easier. One thing that also changes, which is very, very important, is this. Here it says the order of operations. Now you already learned that first we have to do brackets, and then we have to do multiplying and dividing, and then we have to do adding and subtracting. But now we also have to do squares, because that's the new thing that we do this year, and that goes between brackets and multiplying and dividing. So here we have squares, and later on this step will also have square roots, which is the opposite of a square, but we'll get to that later. So first brackets, then squares, then times divided by, and then plus and minus. Now I'm going to show you the answer for exercise 3, because there you have to calculate a couple of things, and it says don't forget to write down the intermediate steps, so you shouldn't forget them. Now over here I have a paper, and I already copied these exercises onto it, and we're just going to calculate it. Now I'm going to do this order, A, D, G, and then I'm going to move to B, E, and H, so hopefully you don't find that order annoying or anything. It says 5 times 4 squared. Now we have to do squared first. If you look to the order of operations, first brackets, but there aren't any brackets, then squares. So now we're going to square this, and 4 squared is 16, because 4 times 4 is 16. And then 5 times 16 is 80. Gonna move on to this one. Now this one is already a bit more difficult, as you can see. First we have to do brackets. So there are brackets here, and in the brackets it says a half. So we can't really calculate it because it's a half. But we have to do a half squared. So that means a half times a half. There's a little side note I can write down for you. A half times a half, 1 times 1 is 1, and 2 times 2 is 4. So this will be 1/4. So here we have 1/4 times 16, and then there's a minus here. And this one we can already calculate. 8 squared is 64, because 8 times 8 is 64. And if you filled in this table, then you can just see what it is. So that's why it's very handy to fill that in. So now we have to do times. So 16 times 1/4, well, that's 4. And then 64 minus 4 is the answer. So the answer is 60. Then this one, here we have 3/4 times 8 and then squared. Well, first we have to do brackets. So 3 times 8 is 24. So 24 over 4, and then that's squared. Well, first we can calculate what this is, because 24 divided by 4 is just 6. And 6 squared is 36. And that's the answer then for G. So now we're going to go to a B here. Here we have 5 squared times 4. 5 squared is 25. And then 25 times 4 is 100. Alright, so that was a short one. Then here we have a more difficult one again. Here we have 8 minus 3, so that's 5. We need to square that and then multiply it with 5. Well, 5 squared is 25. Right, 5 times 5 is 25. Times 5, so the answer will be 125. Right, and then we get a very difficult one. We have to do all these brackets first, right? But we can also do all of these separately, and then we're going to add them. So 1 squared is just 1, and then we have 3/4 squared. So 3/4 squared, let me make a little side note here. We do 3/4 times itself, right? Now 3 times 3 is 9, and 4 times 4 is 16. So this is 9 over 16. I'm going to write that down over here. And then we're going to go to this one. Well, this is 1.5 squared, so that's kind of annoying. So what you could do is take the 1 and put it in the brackets, or in the fraction. Then you have 3 over 2. And then if you have, let me make another side note here. If you have 3 over 2 times 3 over 2, then this will be 9/4. So plus 9/4. Now if you want to add the fractions, then you should make sure that the denominator is the same. So we're going to make this into 16th also. So that means we have to make it 4 times as big. And 4 times 9 is 36. So we have 36 over 16, 9 over 16, and 1. So then we're going to just write the 1 down here. And then we're going to add this. That's 45 over 16, because 9 and 36 together is 45. And then let's see how many times we can take 16 out of this. If you take it out twice, 2 times 16 is 32, so you have 12 left. So we have 1, and then we have 12 over, 13, sorry about that. This is 13 over 16, yes. So then we cannot make it smaller. So the answer is 1, and then 13 over 16. Very difficult exercise, this one. Later on we have one other one that's very difficult. But before we do that one, we have 2 of them that are easier again, so that's nice. We have 5 squared minus 4 squared. So 5 squared is 25, 4 squared is 16, and 25 minus 16 is 9, and that's the answer. Okay, now please don't make this mistake, because a very common mistake with squares is that people say, oh, 5 squared is 10, because 5 times 2 is 10. But this is not times, this is squared, right? So this is going to be wrong. So 5 times 5 is 25, and 4 times 4 is 16, and then you do that. Then F, here we have 6 squared divided by 9. Well, 6 squared is 6 times 6, that's 36. Divided by 9 will be 4, and that's the answer. And then the final one is a very difficult one again. Here we have 1/8 divided by 1/4 squared. Okay, so first we have 1/8. I'm going to take the 1 and I'm going to put it in the bracket, or in the fraction, sorry. So you have 9 over 8. And then here we have divided by, and here we have 1/4 times 1/4. Well, 1/4 times 1/4 is going to be 1/16. So here we have 1/16. Now here's a rule that you might have forgotten, so I'll tell you it now. If you divide by a fraction, you can multiply by the opposite if you turn the fraction upside down. So here we have 16 over 1. And then here we have 9 over 8. And then if you do 9 times 16, you have 144. And 8 times 1 is just 8. So here we have 144 over 8. Now maybe you can make that smaller, right? How many times does 8 fit into 144? Well, if this were 160, it would fit in there 20 times. So this is 16 less, so I think it will fit in there 18 times. And then that's the answer. So this was the answer for exercise 3, a very big exercise as you can see. So I don't know if you're going to have time left this lesson, but if you do have time left, then you can also make this square Sudoku game if you'd like. You can read what it says over there. Well, thank you for watching, and bye-bye.